At 5:30 on Friday evening, in the middle of Grayford's Founders' Day ceremony, a volunteer climbed onto a folding chair and removed Noel Hart's name from the row of people the town was about to honor. The banner above the town hall still read Grayford Strong, and Elias Vale, the alpha mayor everyone called the man who saved the town, stood 3 steps above the crowd with his speech in one hand and a silver microphone in the other, watching his Omega become someone Grayford no longer wanted to claim. Noel stood below the stage with a cardboard box of donated children's books pressed against his hip. He was not dressed for a scandal. He wore his soft gray cardigan, his library badge, and the careful expression he used when frightened children came into the shelter after storms. A paperback slipped from the top of the box and landed near his shoe. Noel bent down, brushed dust from the cover with his thumb, and placed it back as if the whole square had not gone quiet around him. Near the cider booth, a woman whispered loudly, "He shouldn't be up there after the grant." Someone else answered, "Mayor Vale should have removed him sooner." Elias heard it. Noel saw him hear it. The scent between them, usually warm with cedar and mint from Elias's Alpha Bond, thinned into something cold and public. Founders' Day was not just a festival in Grayford. It was the day the town decided who belonged. After the spring flood, after the school gym filled with wet blankets and the library became a shelter, Elias had stood in this same square and promised no one would be left outside. Tonight, the town had strung lights between the maple trees, taped paper suns to the windows, and printed Elias's name across every program as the leader who saved them. Noel's name had been printed there too, until the volunteer folded the card in half and tucked it under her clipboard like a mistake. Elias stepped toward the edge of the stage, but Councilwoman Marin touched his elbow and smiled at the crowd. "Not now," she murmured. "Keep them calm." Noel's fingers tightened around the box. For 1 second, Elias looked like he might ignore her. He looked at Noel's red knuckles, at the library badge hanging crooked against his chest, at the children in the front row holding bookmarks Noel had made by hand. Then Elias turned back to the microphone. "Friends of Grayford," he began, his voice steady enough to make the whole square trust him. Noel lowered his eyes. A little boy named Toby broke away from his mother and ran to Noel with a green bookmark clutched in his fist. "Mr. Noel, I saved this for you." His mother caught his shoulder before he reached him. "Not tonight, Toby." She did not say it cruelly. That made it worse. Noel took one quiet breath, the kind he used when shelter pipes froze or a child woke crying from flood dreams. Elias continued, "This town survived because we stood together." Noel looked up then, and for the first time all evening, Elias's voice faltered. The crowd did not notice. Noel did. He shifted the box to both arms and walked toward the side steps, passing close enough for Elias to hear him without the microphone catching it. "Say it now," Noel said softly, "or they will say it for you." Elias's jaw tightened. "Noel, give me 1 minute." Noel paused below him, half in the stage light, half in the dark beyond the bunting. "You had 3 months. The words were not loud, but they changed the air more than a shout would have. Elias glanced down at the speech in his hand. The next line read, "No one in Grayford was left behind." On the front row, Councilman Porter nodded for him to keep going. Behind Noel, 2 volunteers quietly moved the library's collection box away from the honored guests' table. Elias knew about the rumors. Everyone knew. They said Noel had mishandled the winter grant, that the shelter nearly lost funding because an Omega with a soft voice had been trusted with paperwork too heavy for him. Elias had told himself there would be time to correct the details after the ceremony, after the council calmed down, after the town stopped looking for someone to blame. He had told himself silence was not betrayal if it was temporary. But Noel was staring at him as if temporary silence had already become a verdict. Elias lifted the microphone again. "No one in Grayford," he said, and the words dragged against his throat, "was left behind." Applause rose bright and easy across the square. Noel did not clap. He set the box of books at the edge of the stage, carefully turned the top book so the torn corner faced down, and stepped backward out of the warm circle of festival lights. Elias took 1 step after him, but the crowd surged forward, hands reaching to shake the mayor's hand, cameras flashing, voices praising him for saving the town. Through the moving shoulders and paper lanterns, Elias saw Noel stop beside the alley behind Town Hall. Noel touched the library badge at his chest, not removing it yet, only holding it as if remembering who had given it meaning. Then he turned and disappeared behind the building, leaving the box of children's books at Elias's feet like a question the whole town had chosen not to ask. At 6:10 that same Friday evening, behind the town hall, the festival music became a muffled thump through brick walls, while Noel lifted the box of children's books into the back of the library van. A green bookmark slipped out and landed face up on the asphalt. Elias reached it first. The paper was crooked, covered in crayon stars, and the words in the middle were written with the uneven pride of a child. "Thank you, mister." Noel. Elias held it for half a second too long. Noel took it from his fingers before their hands could touch and slid it into the pocket of his cardigan. "The speech went well," Noel said. It was not forgiveness. It was a locked door with polite paint on it. Elias glanced toward the square, where people were still calling his name. "I needed the crowd calm." Noel closed the van door with both hands. "You needed me quiet." The words hit harder because he did not raise his voice. Elias had faced flooded streets, angry business owners, state officials who treated Grayford like a footnote on a disaster report. He knew how to hold the room together. He knew how to lower his alpha scent until frightened people stopped trembling. But Noel, standing in the yellow spill of the security light, library badge crooked against his chest, made Elias feel like every sentence he had prepared was the wrong tool. "Noel, if I challenged the council in the middle of Founders Day, it would have turned into a public fight." Noel looked at him then. It already was. Only one side had a microphone. Before Elias could answer, small sneakers slapped across the pavement. Toby, the little boy from the front row, ducked around the corner with another bookmark clenched in his fist. "Mr. Noel, I made a blue one too." Noel's face changed so quickly, it almost broke Elias. The careful stillness softened, not for Elias, but for the child. Noel crouched and held out his hand. Toby's mother appeared behind him and caught his shoulder. Her smile was apologetic, terrified, and public all at once. "Toby, we should not bother Mr. Hart tonight." Mr. Hart, not Mr. Noel. Not the man who had read to her son under a leaking library roof after the flood. Noel stayed crouched until Toby lowered the bookmark into his palm. "You never bother me," he said gently. Toby's mother pulled him away before the boy could hug him. The parking lot felt colder after they left. Elias watched Noel place the blue bookmark beside the green one in his pocket, careful as if both were fragile evidence. "This is what I am trying to prevent," Elias said. "People are scared. If the grant gets questioned again, the shelter funding could freeze." Noel's thumb stopped on the edge of his pocket. "So you do know what they are afraid of." "I know enough to know this has to be handled carefully." Noel gave a small laugh with no humor in it. "Carefully is the word people use when the truth is inconvenient." Elias stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then tell me the part you keep refusing to tell me." For the first time, Noel's composure cracked at the edge. Not into tears, into disbelief. "I refused?" he asked. "Elias, I signed what they put in front of me because they said if I did not, Grayford would lose everything before winter." Elias went still. "Signed what?" Noel looked toward the curtained windows of the council chamber above them. "The waiver." The word landed between them like a sealed file. Elias had seen paperwork after the flood. He had seen Noel's name under administrative responsibility. He had told himself it meant Noel had accepted a small procedural mistake, the kind councils corrected quietly. He had never seen a waiver. "What waiver?" he asked. Noel's expression closed again, as if Elias's ignorance hurt almost as much as his silence. "Ask the council why I was not allowed to answer." The back door of Town Hall opened before Elias could speak. Councilwoman Marin stepped out, her pearl earrings catching the security light. "Mayor Vale," she called, all sweetness for anyone who might be listening. "The donors are asking for a photo." Noel turned away and reached for the driver's door of the van. Elias caught the edge of the cardboard box before it tipped, and for one brief second, they were both holding the same weight. Noel looked at his hand on the box. "Do not carry it now," he said quietly. "You left it at your feet when it mattered." Then he climbed into the van and shut the door. As the engine started, Elias looked up at the council chamber. Behind the glass, the curtains shifted closed. At 9:20 that same Friday night, the kettle on Noel's small stove began to whistle while he stood at his kitchen table, sealing the torn corner of a donation box with packing tape. The house beside the library still smelled faintly of old paper, rain-damp coats, and the mint tea Elias had once brought over every winter evening after council meetings. Tonight, Elias stood in the doorway with his suit jacket folded over one arm, too large for the room that held Noel's whole quiet life in stacks. Overdue notices, shelter supply lists, a jar of donated pencils, and a handwritten schedule for delivering large print books to seniors who could no longer drive. Noel did not ask why he had followed the library van home. He only pressed the tape flat with his thumb and said, "The donors got their photo?" Elias closed the door behind him. "I left before they finished." Noel's hand paused, but he did not look up. "That is not the same as choosing." The words were soft enough to pass for calm, but Elias heard the lock inside them. He moved closer to the table and saw the red mark circling Noel's wrist where the cardboard box had rubbed skin raw. Instinct pulled him forward before pride could stop him. He knew that drawer, the second one beside the stove. He had opened it 100 times for bandages after shelter repairs, for fever patches when Noel stayed up through flu season with children sleeping between bookshelves. He took out the small tin of healing balm and set it on the table. "Your wrist," he said. Noel looked at the tin, then at Elias's hand. For one dangerous second, he let his sleeve fall back. The mark was worse than Elias had thought. Elias reached for him slowly, leaving space for refusal. Noel's fingers hovered above his palm, close enough that Elias could feel the faint warmth of his omega bond, tired and guarded under the scent of paper dust and peppermint. Then Noel pulled his hand back and picked up the tape instead. "Do not make this small enough to touch." Elias went still. The kettle screamed louder, sharp in the narrow kitchen. Noel turned it off, poured hot water over mint leaves, and set one mug near Elias without meeting his eyes. That small kindness hurt more than rejection. It meant Noel still remembered. It did not mean Elias was forgiven. Elias wrapped his hands around the mug, but did not drink. "I can fix this quietly," he said. "I can talk to Marin, review the grant files, make sure the council corrects the language before Monday." Noel placed his own mug down so carefully that not a drop spilled. "Quietly is how they buried me." Elias frowned. "That is not what I meant." "It is always what you mean when my name becomes inconvenient." On the table between them, a photocopy lay half under a stack of shelter meal cards. Elias had not noticed it until Noel's sleeve brushed the corner aside. The paper carried the town seal, several blacked-out lines, and one sentence still visible near the bottom. Noel Hart waived his right to respond. Elias's hand tightened around the mug. "What is that?" Noel followed his gaze, and for the first time that night, real alarm crossed his face. He turned the page over before Elias could read the date. "Nothing you wanted to see before tonight?" Elias set the mug down. "Who made you sign that?" Noel gave him a look so tired it stripped the authority from the room. "The same people you thanked on stage." Outside, festival fireworks cracked faintly over the roofline, and light flashed blue through the kitchen window. Elias remembered the crowd cheering, Councilman Porter nodding, Marin's hand on his elbow, the speech line he had swallowed like broken glass. No one was left behind. He reached for the paper, not to take it from Noel, but to turn it back over. Noel laid his palm flat on top of it. The gesture was quiet, but final. Do not investigate me like a town problem." Elias withdrew his hand. "Then tell me how to stand beside you." Noel's mouth trembled once, barely. "You had a stage." The kitchen fell silent except for the cooling kettle and the soft click of tape unsticking from the roll. Elias saw the shape of the truth then, not the whole of it, but enough to understand that the scandal was not a mistake Noel had failed to explain. It was a door someone had locked from the outside. Before he could ask again, Noel's phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit with a message from the library volunteer group. "Emergency board notice, Monday morning. Temporary removal pending public trust review." Noel read it once. Then he turned the phone face down, picked up the box cutter, and sliced open another carton of donated books, as if his hands had not just been cut loose from the only place in town he still called home. 3 days later, on Monday morning, the Founders' Day banners were still hanging across Main Street when Noel unlocked the Grayford library to find a sheet of white printer paper taped over the story hour sign with his name on it. The paper had been cut neatly, almost politely, so only the words "with Mr. Noel" disappeared, while the cartoon fox and the reading rug remained. Noel stood there with the key still in the lock, a canvas tote of returned books against his shoulder, and stared at the blank space where the children used to point when they asked if he would do the Bear Voices again. Inside, the library smelled of floor wax, wet umbrellas, and the cinnamon muffins Mrs. Bell left every Monday for the shelter volunteers. At the front desk, someone had placed a stack of returned books without using the drop box, each one turned spine out so Noel would not have to be touched. A man from the hardware store cleared his throat when Noel looked up. "Morning," Noel said. The man nodded at the floor. "Morning, Mr. Hart." Mr. Hart again. Noel stamped the return date on a picture book about a lost duck and slid it into the bag marked Mason, large print, West Route. His hands stayed steady. That was the part people mistook for guilt. At 8:42, the email arrived with the town seal at the top. Temporary removal pending public trust review. Noel read it once beside the checkout scanner, while the printer behind him spat out overdue notices, like nothing in the world had changed. Councilwoman Marin entered before the first patron could ask why the children's chairs were stacked against the wall. Her coat was cream-colored, her smile soft enough for witnesses. "This is not punishment," she said, setting a folder on the desk. "It is optics." Noel picked up a library card a child had left behind and placed it in the lost and found tray. Optics is what people call cruelty when it photographs well. Marin's smile tightened. The town needs confidence in the grant process. Across the street, Elias saw the notice through the glass doors before he saw Noel's face. He had come without his mayoral sash, without reporters, with his phone still open to a deleted post from the Grayford parents group that had called Noel the Omega who nearly froze the shelter. Elias had forced the administrator to remove it at 7:19 that morning. He had not posted a correction. He had told himself the investigation had to come first, that a public defense before records were reviewed would make the council close ranks harder. Then he watched Noel fold the removal notice in half and tuck it under the desk blotter like a receipt, and the excuse tasted worse than the coffee in his hand. "Marin," Elias said from the doorway, "I did not approve a permanent step." Marin turned with practiced surprise. "It is temporary, Mayor, unless Mr. Hart makes it difficult." Noel did not look at him. That was new. Anger would have been easier. "I still have deliveries to make," Noel said, reaching for the canvas bag. "Mrs. Bell cannot read the small print labels on her medication without the large print guide." "You are not authorized to represent the library during review," Marin said. Noel's fingers paused on the bag strap. Elias stepped forward. "I will take the west route." Noel finally looked at him, and the quiet in his eyes cut straight through the room. "You do not know which porch step is loose at Mrs. Bell's house." Before Elias could answer, a teenage volunteer slipped out from behind the computer station. Lily had a purple backpack, ink on her fingers, and the frightened bravery of someone who had found something adults wanted buried. "Mister?" "Noel," she whispered, holding up a flash drive from the library's public records terminal. Why does the file say you weren't allowed to respond? Every sound in the library seemed to stop at once. The scanner beep, the rain against the windows, even Marin's polished little breath. Noel crossed the room faster than Elias had ever seen him move, and gently lowered Lily's hand before the girl could plug the drive into the desk computer. "Not here," he said. It was the first time all morning his voice shook. Elias looked from the flash drive to the folded notice under the blotter, then to the councilwoman, whose smile had vanished completely. Marin reached for her phone. "That file is restricted." Lily's eyes widened. "It was in the public folder." Noel closed his hand around the flash drive, not hiding it from Elias, but not giving it to him either. "Go home, Lily." "But they are saying you did it." Noel softened for her, the way he had softened for Toby. "I know." Elias took one step closer. "Noel, what is on that file?" Noel looked past him, toward the white paper covering his name on the story hour sign. "The part of the meeting no one put in the minutes." Then Marin said, too sharply, "Mayor, a word outside." And for the first time since Friday night, Elias did not move when the council called his name. By Wednesday night, 2 days after the council pushed Noel out of his own library, he was still in the back storage room sewing the torn edge of a shelter blanket because winter did not wait for public trust. The fluorescent light above him flickered every few seconds, turning the stacks of donated coats silver, then gray, then silver again. A laptop sat open on a crate of canned soup beside him, its screen asleep, the purple flash drive Lily had found taped carefully to the lid with a sticky note that said, "Mr. Noel, I did not open it, I promise." Noel threaded the needle through the blanket's frayed blue binding and pulled until the knot held. Elias stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, watching him repair something for people who had stopped saying his name. "You are not supposed to be working here," Elias said. Noel did not look up. "Neither is the roof leak, but it came back anyway." Behind them, rain tapped against the small basement window, and somewhere upstairs, the empty story hour room creaked as the old radiator warmed. Elias stepped inside and saw the details he had never had to learn. Inhaler reminders clipped to Mrs. Bell's blanket bag, peanut allergy notes for the after-school kids, a handwritten route for Mr. Mason's large print books, and a coffee can labeled bus tokens for families without cars. The library had never just been a library. It was where Grayford hid every need too small for a press conference. Elias reached for one of the folded blankets. "Why are you still fixing their blankets?" Noel tied off the thread with 2 precise knots. "Because being cast out does not make me cruel." The laptop screen woke when his elbow brushed the crate. A file name appeared in the corner. Grant_session_March_12_audio. Elias went still. March 12th was 3 months ago, the week after the floodwater finally left Main Street. He had been at the state capitol that day, shaking hands under fluorescent lights, begging for emergency funds, while cameras filmed him looking exhausted and heroic. Back in Grayford, Noel had been sleeping on a library rug between 2 shelves, waking every hour to check that the space heaters had not tripped the breaker. Elias remembered coming home after midnight and finding Noel asleep with a child's picture book open on his chest. He had kissed Noel's hair and called him the heart of the town. He had not asked what the town had made that heart carry while he was gone. "Play it," Elias said. Noel's needle stopped in the blanket. "If that file spreads, the grant can be reviewed again. If it clears you, the town needs to know." Noel looked up then, and the calm in his face was worse than anger. The town knew enough to stay warm. Elias did not answer. Noel reached over and opened the file, not because Elias had asked, but because hiding it had begun to look too much like agreeing with the lie. Static hissed from the laptop speakers. Then Marin's voice filled the storage room, flat and careful. "If no one accepts administrative responsibility, the winter shelter grant will be frozen pending state review." A chair scraped in the recording. Noel's younger voice asked, "If I sign, do I get to tell people why?" Another councilman answered, "If you respond publicly, the waiver is void. The review reopens."
Rain tapped harder against the basement glass. Elias stared at the laptop as if the old plastic machine had become a witness stand. In the recording, Noel was quiet for several seconds.
Then he asked, "If the grant freezes, what happens to the shelter?" Marin said, "No heaters, no overnight program, no senior delivery van until December at the earliest." Noel's hand tightened around the blanket in the present. Elias could see the exact moment 3 months ago without being in the room. Noel calculating bodies instead of blame, children instead of dignity, elders instead of his own name. On the recording, Noel said, "Then put it under mine." Elias breathed out once, broken and small. Noel closed the laptop before the next voice could speak. "That is enough." "No," Elias said, sharper than he meant. "It is not." Noel stood, the repaired blanket folded over his arms. "Do not make my silence useful only now that it hurts you." The words struck Elias cleanly because they were true. His absence that day did not make him guilty of the council's choice, but his trust in their clean minutes, his speeches about unity, his careful quiet since Friday had made their choice easier to keep. A buzzer sounded upstairs, the side door. Noel glanced at the old wall clock. "Mrs. Bell," he said. "She always returns her books late when it rains." Elias moved toward the stairs. "I will get it." Noel blocked him with the folded blanket. "She does not know you keep the step loose, so she remembers to lift her cane." Elias stopped. He had not known there was a loose step. He had not known there were bus tokens in a coffee can. He had not known the man he loved had traded his own voice for the town's heat. Noel walked past him, carrying the blanket upstairs. At the door, Mrs. Bell's thin voice called, "Is Mr. Noel still here?" Noel paused with his hand on the knob, and for the first time that night, Elias heard fear under his calm. Not fear of being hated, fear of what would happen to everyone else if the truth finally came out. He turned back to Elias and asked quietly, "If they learn what I signed to save them, who do you think they will punish next?" Elias had no answer before his phone buzzed on the crate. A message from Marin lit the screen. "Friday ceremony. Final statement required. Noel Hart must step down permanently to restore public trust." 2 days later, on Friday afternoon, campaign flyers covered Elias Vale's desk while the final Founders' Day ceremony waited 3 hours away outside the town hall windows. The flyers showed Elias smiling beneath the words, "Keep Grayford strong," but the paper beneath his hand said something colder. "Noel Hart will step down permanently to restore public trust." The town seal sat at the bottom like a locked door. Elias had not signed it. He had read it 4 times, each time stopping at Noel's name, each time hearing the recording from the library basement. "If I sign, do I get to tell people why?" Across from him, Councilman Porter tapped his wedding ring against the arm of the leather chair. "Choose the town, Mayor." Elias looked up slowly. "Noel is the town." Porter's expression did not change. "Then why is he the only one you keep asking to wait?" The sentence landed with the precision of something cruel, because it was partly true. Elias had spent 48 hours chasing procedure, requesting closed minutes, calling the state grant office, asking Marin for the original waiver language, blocking 3 more posts on the parents' group before they could spread. He had done everything except stand in the square and say Noel's name where people could hear it. Marin stood beside the window, watching volunteers hang lanterns for the evening ceremony. "If you do not sign before tonight, the donors will ask why the shelter scandal is still unresolved. If they ask, the state may ask. If the state asks, the grant could freeze." Elias's alpha scent sharpened before he forced it down. "Do not use the shelter to threaten me." Marin turned. "We are using the shelter to protect the shelter. That is what Mr. Hart understood 3 months ago." Outside the office door, Noel stopped with a folder of delivery routes in his hand. He had come to return the shelter reports no one had asked for, but everyone still needed. Mrs. Bell's inhaler schedule, Mr. Mason's large print route, the list of children who could not have peanut butter snacks. Through the cracked door, he saw Elias holding the pen. Not signing, not refusing, holding. It was such a small posture, but Noel knew it better than anyone. Elias always froze at the edge of a public fracture and called it strategy. "Give me one night," Elias said inside the office. "No," Marin answered. "Tonight is the last ceremony. The town needs a clean ending." Noel looked down at the folder in his arms. On top was the library key, the shelter key, and the plastic badge that still said coordinator, even though the town had already removed him in every way that mattered. He thought of the children's chair stacked against the wall, the white paper covering his name, the bookmarks hidden in his cardigan pocket. Then he stopped waiting for Elias to choose quickly enough. He walked to the empty records counter, took a plain town hall envelope, and placed the keys inside one by one. The shelter key made a dull sound against the library key. The badge followed last. For a moment, his thumb rested over his own printed name. Then he slid the envelope shut. Downstairs, the first test firework cracked over Grayford, bright enough to shake dust from the old ceiling vent. Elias opened the office door just as Noel stepped away from the counter. Their eyes met across the hallway. Elias saw the envelope in Noel's hand and understood too late that this was not paperwork. This was a goodbye to the place Noel had kept alive. "Noel," he said. Noel held the folder of roots out to him. "Mrs. Bell's porch step is still loose. Tell whoever replaces me before she falls." Elias did not take it. "I am not signing it." Noel's face did not soften. "Not signing is not the same as speaking." The words cut cleanly through the hallway. Behind Elias, Porter said, "Mayor, the ceremony begins in 3 hours." Noel slipped the envelope into his coat pocket and walked toward the stairs. His phone buzzed once before he reached the landing. Elias's phone buzzed a second later. The message on the screen was from Noel. "You do not have to speak for me tonight. I will return what belongs to the town myself." At 7:05 that Friday night, the final Founders' Day ceremony began under a row of paper lanterns, and Noel stepped across the chalk line where honored guests were supposed to stand with a plain town hall envelope in his hand. The brass band was still tuning near the cider booth. Children sat cross-legged by the stage with glow sticks looped around their wrists. On the council table, between a basket of ribbon pins and the glass award marked Grayford Strong, Noel placed the envelope so gently that only Elias noticed the dull sound of keys inside. Elias had reached the bottom of the town hall steps seconds too late, his phone still open to Noel's message. He saw the envelope. He saw Noel's library badge through the thin paper. He saw the shelter key, the one with the red rubber cap Noel had added because Mrs. Bell's hands shook in winter. "Noel," Elias said, low enough that the microphone did not catch it. Noel did not turn toward him first. He faced the council, then the town, then the children who used to sit around his reading rug every Monday morning. "These belong to Grayford," he said. Councilman Porter rose halfway from his chair. "Mr. Hart, this is not the time." Noel looked at him with the same calm he used for frightened children and overflowing shelter pipes. "That is what you said when you asked me to sign." The first murmur moved through the crowd like wind through dry leaves. Elias took one step forward, but Marin's hand came up sharply, warning him to keep the ceremony intact. This time he did not look at her. Noel touched the envelope once, as if making sure his own name was really inside it, then let his hand fall. "A town that needs my silence more than my truth is not my home." No one applauded. No one coughed. Even the band stopped tuning. The sentence did not sound like a threat. It sounded like a door closing from the inside. Toby, standing near his mother with the blue bookmark tucked into his jacket pocket, whispered, "Mom, why is Mr. Noel leaving?" His mother did not answer. Lily pushed through the edge of the crowd, her purple backpack bouncing against one shoulder, her face pale with the kind of fear that made truth louder instead of smaller. "But he did not do what they said," she blurted. Marin turned so fast her pearl earrings flashed. "Lily, step back." The girl held up the purple flash drive in both hands. "The recording says he was not allowed to answer." The square shifted. People looked from Lily to Noel, from Noel to the council table, from the council table to Elias. Noel's breath caught, not because Lily had lied, but because she had told the first piece of truth in the most dangerous place possible. "Lily," he said softly, "go stand with your mother." "No," Lily said, voice shaking. "Everyone keeps saying you almost froze the shelter. The file says you were trying to keep it open." A woman near the bakery booth covered her mouth. Someone in the back asked, "What recording?" Porter reached for the microphone, but Elias got there first. His hand closed around the stand before Porter could pull it closer. For one heartbeat, Elias and Noel looked at each other across the stage lights, the envelope of keys between them, but no longer the only thing separating them. Elias knew that if he spoke now without the full record, the council would call it panic. If he chased Noel, the town would bury the file before morning. If he did nothing, Noel's words would become another rumor swallowed by music and fireworks. Noel seemed to understand every option crossing his face. That was the cruelest part. He had always understood Elias too well. Noel bent to pick up the cardboard box of children's books from beside the stage. The same box Elias had left at his feet on Friday. This time, Noel carried it himself. He passed the front row, pausing only when Toby reached out the blue bookmark. Noel took it, tucked it beside the green one in his cardigan pocket, and said, "Keep reading, okay?" Toby nodded with wet eyes. Noel did not look back when he left the circle of lantern light. The crowd parted for him now, not with anger, but with a confusion too late to be kindness. Behind him, the envelope sat on the council table like a verdict. Elias kept one hand on the microphone and turned to the council members, who had taught a town to sacrifice one quiet omega for heat, funding, and clean headlines. "Open the record," he said. Marin's face went white. Above the square, the first firework burst without warning, bright enough to light Noel's back as he walked toward the dark street beyond Town Hall, carrying the books while the whole town finally began to ask what he had been forbidden to say. The next morning, before the festival booths reopened, Elias stood in the library basement with the shelter key in his palm and could not open the blanket closet. A yellow sticky note in Noel's handwriting was taped beside the keypad. "Check Mrs. Bell's inhaler before lights out." Under it was another note. "Toby cannot have peanut butter crackers." The fluorescent light buzzed above rows of folded blankets, bus token cans, children's snack bins, and a whiteboard full of names Elias had praised in speeches but never learned how to care for. Upstairs, someone pulled on the locked glass door. An old voice called, "Is Mr. Noel here?" Elias closed his hand around the key until the red rubber cap pressed into his skin. The town had not only lost a coordinator last night, it had lost the one person who knew where every quiet need was kept. At 8:27, he carried Lily's flash drive and the copied minutes into the public records room. Porter was already there with Marin, both of them speaking too softly until Elias placed the drive on the table. Under the town charter, Elias signed an emergency public session order himself, citing falsified public minutes and immediate risk to shelter operations. "Play it," Elias said. Marin folded her hands. "Mayor, if you open a closed session without counsel, you risk the grant." Elias looked at the whiteboard through the basement window. Bell, inhaler. Mason, West Route. Diaz kids, no peanuts. "You used that sentence on him too." No one answered. The recording began with static, a chair scraping, and Noel's voice from 3 months earlier, younger only because it had not yet learned how much silence weighed. "If I sign, do I get to tell people why?"
Porter's recorded voice answered, "If you respond publicly, the waiver is void. The review reopens." The room held still. Then Marin's voice on the file said, "If the grant freezes, there is no winter shelter funding, no senior delivery van, no overnight heat program until December at the earliest." A pause, then Noel, very quiet, "Then put it under mine." Elias did not move. Regret did not arrive like tears. It arrived like instructions he had never bothered to read. Noel had not mishandled the grant. He had let his own name become the place Grayford stored its fear. "You let them think he almost froze the shelter," Elias said. Porter straightened. "He agreed to the waiver." Elias turned on him. "He agreed to keep people warm. You turned that into guilt." By 9:05, Elias opened the emergency public session himself.
He did not wait for Marin's prepared statement. He did not call Noel first, because apology before action would only ask Noel to carry one more thing. He set the recorder on the council table, pressed play, and let Grayford hear the question Noel had not been allowed to answer. People stood shoulder to shoulder in the town hall, still wearing festival jackets, hair damp from the morning drizzle. Mrs. Bell sat in the front row with her cane across her knees. Toby held his mother's sleeve. When the recording reached Noel's sentence, "Then put it under mine," Toby's mother covered her mouth and began to cry without sound. Elias faced them all. "Noel Hart did not endanger this town," he said, each word steadier than the last. "He protected it when this council gave him no clean choice. I let a false record stand because I wanted calm more than truth. That was my failure." Marin rose. "Mayor, you are compromising an active funding matter." Elias placed the unsigned statement from Friday on the table and tore it once, cleanly, down the middle. "The public trust review is suspended. The minutes will be corrected. An independent inquiry starts today. And my re-election campaign is paused until this town knows exactly who taught it to blame him." Outside the hall, the library door remained locked, and that was the answer no public speech could soften. That afternoon, Elias found Noel beside the old bus stop at the edge of town, loading the cardboard box of children's books into the back of the library van. Not the town's van for much longer. The magnet on the door had already been removed, leaving a pale rectangle where Grayford Public Library used to be. Elias stopped several feet away. "I corrected the record." Noel slid the box inside and did not turn around right away. "That gave me back my name." His voice was calm, almost kind, and that hurt worse. "It did not give me back my home." Elias looked at the empty space on the van door, then at the bookmarks tucked into Noel's cardigan pocket. "Tell me what I can do." Noel finally faced him. The morning had not made him softer. It had made him clearer. "Start by learning who gets cold when I am not there." Then he closed the van doors between them, not as a punishment, but as a boundary. Elias had finally learned how to hear. 3 weeks after Elias corrected the public record, Noel did not return to the town library. At 10 on a clear Saturday morning, he opened the back doors of a blue second-hand van beside the old bus stop at the edge of Grayford and taped a handwritten sign to the first crate of books. Route 1, no one left outside. The van still smelled of new paint and old vinyl. The title transfer paper sat clipped under Noel's route map, proof that this van now belonged to the work he chose, not the town that had cast him out. A folding table stood under a white canopy. Large print novels filled one crate, picture books filled another, and the coffee can of bus tokens sat beside a clipboard labeled Bell, Mason, Diaz, West Route. Noel had written every name himself, not because the town had asked him to come back. Because people still needed books, blankets, inhaler reminders, peanut-free snacks, and someone who remembered which porch step was loose. Mrs. Bell arrived first, leaning on her cane while Toby walked beside her with the blue bookmark tucked into his jacket pocket. Toby looked at the van, then at Noel. "Is this the new library?" Noel smiled, small but real. "It is the first route." His mother stood behind him, shame folded into both hands. "Mr. Noel," she said, voice unsteady, "I should not have pulled him away that night." Noel handed Toby a picture book about a fox crossing a river. "Then let him choose his own book today." The woman nodded, and this time, when Toby stepped forward, no one stopped him. A gray pickup rolled into the lot 10 minutes later. Elias got out without his mayoral sash, without reporters, without the campaign jacket that used to make people straighten when he entered a room. He carried no flowers, no speech, no public apology printed on town letterhead. Only a clipboard, 2 empty canvas bags, and the West route map Noel had left at the shelter door the week before. He stopped at the edge of the canopy instead of stepping under it like he belonged there. Noel saw him and continued stamping due dates into the back of children's books. The sound was soft, steady, final in a way Elias respected enough not to interrupt. When Noel finished, Elias held out the clipboard. Mrs. Bell's inhaler note is first. Mr. Mason's porch delivery is second. The Diaz kids need the peanut-free box. Noel looked at the list, then at him. You learned the route.
I drove it twice, Elias said. Once with the shelter board, once alone. I still missed the loose step until Mrs. Bell hit it with her cane and called me hopeless. Noel's mouth almost curved. Almost. Elias did not reach for that almost as if it were forgiveness. He set the canvas bags on the ground between them and took one step back. The council investigation is open. Marin and Porter are suspended from grant oversight. The shelter board is independent now. Your name is corrected in every public record. Noel closed the stamp pad. That gave me back my name. Elias nodded because he had already heard the rest and had spent 3 weeks learning not to argue with pain just because it hurt to hear. It did not give you back your home.
Noel looked toward Main Street, where the town hall clock tower rose above the maple trees. The library windows caught the morning sun, familiar and distant. I do not know if I want that home back. Then I will not ask you to return to it so I can look forgiven. That was the first sentence Elias said that made Noel fully turn toward him. Not because it fixed anything, but because it finally named the shape of the wrong. Elias looked at the crates, the canopy, the children choosing books beside the old bus stop. I loved the town loudly, he said. I failed you quietly. I'm not asking to stand in front of this. He touched the clipboard, not Noel. Tell me where to carry the books. Noel studied him for a long moment. The alpha bond between them was still there, not warm enough to erase what had happened, not broken enough to pretend they were strangers. It sat between them like a road neither of them could cross without choosing every step. You can stand beside the van, Noel said at last, not in front of it. You do not answer questions for me. You do not turn my work into your redemption. And if I say stop, you stop. Elias lowered his head once. Understood. And we are not back where we were. No, Elias said. We start where you say we start. Noel handed him the West route bag. Their fingers brushed for one quiet second. Elias did not hold on. That mattered more than any apology he could have said. By noon, the canopy was full of small, ordinary sounds. Toby reading aloud to Mrs. Bell, paperbacks sliding into canvas bags, the stamp pad clicking open and shut, Elias checking names off Noel's route without missing one. When a reporter from the county paper approached, Elias stepped aside before she could aim the camera at him. Ask Mr. Hart, he said. This is his route. Noel glanced at him, and something in his face softened. Not forgiveness completed, not love restored to its old shape, but the first careful proof that a new one could be built. At the end of the morning, Noel took down the empty crates while Elias folded the canopy exactly the way Noel showed him. The last sign remained taped to the van door. Route 1, no one left outside. Noel smoothed one loose corner of the tape, then passed Elias a stack of books without looking away from the road ahead. Elias took them and stood where he had been told to stand, beside the van, behind Noel's choice, under a sky clear enough for the whole town to see that Noel Hart had not been brought back into Grayford's light. He had built his own, and this time, Elias was learning how not to cast a shadow over it.